without CPQ, what companies usually do is they reference those hard bundles, if you will, those non-configurable bundles as a single SKU. Okay. Now the challenge obviously is sometimes those bundles, and I don't have this information yet from you, but sometimes those things, those different components are comprised of things that are a fixed item. We spoke a little bit earlier in the call about percent of total. Maybe there's a maintenance or a support component to it. And there's the various pieces of that bundle. And even if it's not configurable, the components fall into different buckets, right? So from your finance guy's perspective, he wants to know how much of this is revenue is licensing revenue, how much of this is maintenance revenue, how much of this is services revenue, and you go into that. And that's, again, as you move towards this whole ASC 606, you need to know what buckets things fall into. So in the traditional model where you're just picking, say, a single line item, you lose that. Now, obviously, without a tool like CPQ, you can select each individual line or even create code to automatically select different things, but then you're in the business of maintaining code, which most people don't want to do. So when you have a tool like this, it gives you the opportunity to create those components if they fall into those different buckets, so you can recognize the portions of the revenue that go to the right buckets. You can package that up as different offerings, even if you never show it to the rep, even if you never show it to the client. They're part of the ingredients, right, that fall into, that comprise that SKU that you do show, so that your finance folks can divvy up that revenue when it passes down to NetSuite, and NetSuite knows what to do with it. It knows what's the fixed fee items, what are the maintenance lines or support lines or licensing lines, and it knows all of that. So having a tool that allows you to combine those things, even if you don't disclose all those subcomponents to your internal users or your external your clients, that'll be key. The other thing you mentioned was, you've got salespeople that are going to be selling things that came into the organization from acquisition, or maybe some of the salespeople came along with the acquisition. But you have groups of people that are going to be selling things they're not as familiar with. So having some sort of structure around the packaging that guides them, puts those guardrails on the sales, so that they have room to negotiate, but no more than you're willing to give them. Gives that structure and helps them get over that learning curve. There's a feature that you'll hear when you talk through CPQ. If you speak to Salesforce or anybody like that that's selling the licenses, they'll talk to you about things like guided selling. And guided selling is basically a way, when you have a group of salespeople that maybe aren't familiar with the products, or for growing organizations that are constantly hiring new people and trying to ramp them and teach them how to ask the right questions. Guided selling offers the option to create, it's basically, think of it as a set of search filters that are presented in the form of questions. So you ask this question first, and based on your answer, you ask another question, and based on that answer, you ask another question. And it just takes that whole set of product offerings and strips it down to which is the SKU or the couple of SKUs that maybe are relevant based on the answers that you gave. I will tell you that basically, as I said, it's guided selling is a different presentation for search filters. I will tell you that it's very rare that people actually implement it, because they usually feel by the time they see it that the search filters themselves, which are available on screen, are good enough. They work. But the feature's there. And again, I think it's especially interesting for companies who are hiring very quickly and constantly bringing on new people and helping them ramp up. So that's another one of those selling points. The last thing to help you justify is obviously the visibility into your data, to know what your customers own, when they're up for renewal, what is their renewal pricing. We haven't spoken yet about renewal pricing. I'll give you an example though, and there is a case study out on the website that we showed a screen earlier, but there is a case study out there for a client that I actually recently worked with who implemented Salesforce CPQ with another partner, and then brought us in to tidy it up. They did a couple of things, right? Their first mistake was they didn't implement amendments and renewals, which I spoke about earlier, the importance of doing that. But they there was a lot of data that they just didn't have good visibility to. The way the products were structured, the way they were showing MRR and ARR. For example, we came in and we calculate MRR and ARR at the line level. But we not only do that, but we actually show you on a subsequent amendment or a renewal how much of this was expansion, how much was contraction, how much was product churn. At the time of renewals, the same thing. So you can start to have better visibility into what's going on your transactions at midterm through amendments and at the time of renewal. And the other thing that this gave them when we started to really clean up their data, we pushed this stuff live just a couple of months ago, I think. And I had a call with him shortly after, just, how are we doing? How's it going? He said, oh, we're in fire drill mode. And I thought, things had gone haywire. And he said, no, it's not CPQ. It's just that we now have such visibility into our data that we're seeing things that were wrong before and we just didn't know it. And suddenly they had all this extra visibility that they didn't have before, and they were fixing, problems that were previously ingrained in the business. They just didn't know it was a problem until we gave them exposure to it. So it was sort of I don't want to say it was accidental, but it was a benefit that I don't think he'd really counted on when we were doing all this work. So again, when I come back and say the CFOs are usually the ones nodding their heads, it's for all those reasons. And I'd be happy to get on a call with you at some point with whoever these folks are, whether it's the sales management team or ops or finance or legal or anybody, and we can talk through this.